and we are in broadcast. Welcome everyone to the Cloud Digital Transformation and New Normal webinar. We're just going to wait a few moments whilst everyone logs in, and then we'll commence the presentations. Whilst we're waiting, thanks to everyone for attending. We've actually got attendees from across the globe joining us for the webinar. We've got people from Europe, Australia, Asia, North America, and South America. It's a pretty global audience, which is great. I'm certain that all attendees will relate to and hopefully look to implement some of the insights that our speakers present today. In order to maximize the experience, I'm going to take you through some housekeeping to begin with. At the bottom of your screens, you'll be able to see a Q&A and a chat tool. There will be time at the end of the presentations for any questions that you may have. So please pop them into the Q&A during the talks. At the end of the speaker presentations, we'll open up all the panelists to answer questions that you've submitted. During the course of today, we'll be sharing our combined experiences of why, and importantly, how project controls can be successfully migrated to the cloud. Virtually every organization that we've come into contact with sees cloud as a fundamental part of their digital transformation journey. The first speaker today will be Paul Vogels, who is Managing Director at Primaned. Primaned have always played a pivotal role in the digital transformation of project controls right from the very beginning. Paul and his team are seen as the primary go-to partner for project controls digital transformation across Europe. Our second speaker will be Dr. Asif Sharif, who is Executive Vice President of Strategy EMEA at LoadSpring. Asif has actually over 30 years of construction and cloud computing market experience, with the last 20 being spent understanding and actually defining cloud solutions. I'm sure that you'll find his learnings on what makes a successful transition to the cloud invaluable. I'm Kerry Baden, the VP of Sales here at EMEA at LoadSpring. I'll be your host for the webinar. In case you do have any further questions or queries after the webinar, you can send them over to me. I'll be putting up my contact details later on. Right, let's just see. It looks like we've got the majority of the people now logged in, which is great. So let's commence the webinar presentations. I'd now like to pass over to Paul for our first presentation. Paul, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Kerry, and a warm welcome to everybody from all over the globe. Indeed, I see some Dutch customers as well. I see some international customers as well. So a very warm welcome to everybody. As again, my name is Paul Vogels, Managing Director of Primaned. I've been in business for a long time. I did my study in technical informatics, so I know a bit about the bits and pieces, but also did some business administration. So what I really like to do is to close that gap between the business and the informatics, and where people, processes, and tools should help each other. Small introduction from our company as well. Primaned, Primavera, Netherlands. If you look a little bit on the logo and on our name, we used to be called Primavera Netherlands, Nederland in Dutch translated. So when we started our business early 1980s, we were the first and unique reseller of Primavera as a scheduling tool. But during the course of time, we start changing our organization, and in the end resulting in changing our name with a big wink to our origin, Primaned, of course. And our organization transformed from a software reseller into a more boutique consulting organization. So we still have this very important toolbox business unit where we as Primavera reseller and implementation partner know every button and every inside out from Primavera, but also we gain some more dealerships and some more insights in the best of breed solutions in the market nowadays. So I want to talk about PM Web. I can talk about Safran. There are also other additional tools we support, but it's not just Primavera anymore. It's more than that. But also from a consulting point of view, we have some process engineers, we have some business consultants. There's a big staffing agency where we staff our project controls engineers, our schedulers, so to call, and to complete this quartet. It's a Primaned Academy where we train in the Netherlands and in the Benelux, but even outside that, we have an Irish academy, we have a German customer base where we start training people on the project control. So from a software point of view to a more consulting firm specialized in project controls. But today we will talk about, or we will focus on Primavera. And Primavera is a long time kid in the neighborhood, started as a scheduling tool. Primavera Inc. was an American organization which did a scheduling tool. It's a professional client, some additional tools, some modules in this, where it started growing into a real dare to stay software solution, which we know from the beginning. And it started in early 80s. It started very well. This is called our museum, and if you take a good look, it's not the best picture. You can see floppy disk, and I rest assured that some people are there who only recognize a floppy disk from the save button in Microsoft Word, but this used to be Primavera, P3, etc., as a floppy, as a serial port, etc. So it really started early on as a Microsoft DOS, MS-DOS organization or MS-DOS software solution, transformed to Windows, and at the end bought by Oracle to become their Primavera Global Business Unit, to become the construction engineering business unit, which at the end is one of the best of breed software solutions in the market. Talking to other partners and where we met LoadSpring, for example, is well, there is a gap, and I want to talk more about that in the next couple of minutes. There is a gap between this single project and this single laptop installation and since a couple of years, a vendor SaaS solution for 25 plus users, where everything comes from the cloud. But there's a gap in centralizing your local IT organization with the support Primavera needs, with the support your organization, your scheduling organization, your PMO needs from the IT department, for example. And that's where we teamed up, where we really partnered up with Primaned as the European go-to partner on Primavera, and LoadSpring, who is the go-to partner on managed hosting solutions. Worldwide organization. I'm sure Asif will talk about that more in detail later on, and otherwise we are more than happy to. But LoadSpring, well, is the best in market on the managed hosting solutions, infrastructure, etc., data centers, etc., what you need to have. So to close that gap between this very small and sometimes decentralized planning organization, scheduling organization, and this larger vendor-driven SaaS solution, there is a big gap. There's also possibility to grow out of it, but there's a big gap where you can see, well, I need to support as it's running my business, because scheduling a project is very important. You have to live up to your plan, so it's very important. So it needs the right organizational support to, well, it's business critical nowadays. So when we look into this solution, professional client is a big driver, struggling a bit with the controls, but if everything goes all right, you should see the next slides coming up. Primavera came from a long way, as you have seen in our museum, and has been through a lot of transformations. This is just a simple screenshot. What you can see is a schedule, but it's a local database or it's a virtual database. It's database driven, and that's one of the key differentiators of Primavera. It's multi-user, multi-project, but multi-user on single laptops is very difficult. So it has been through a lot of developments. Because it has a long history, it's sometimes very hard or harder than a new to be developed solution, which, for example, can be purely web-based. It has a lot of components. It normally talks with big infrastructure, databases, APIs, etc. I'm not going into much detail, technical detail, but as this is a very simplistic representation of the architecture, you can see that you need a good supporting organization to handle this, because there are a lot of possibilities. It can be a project-based deployment. It can be a single laptop deployed organization. It can be a 2 or more user or laptop or desktop organization, but with one central database, so in one centralized IT environment. And at the end, of course, everything is going into SaaS, into recurring modules, into cloud solutions. Also, the vendor, Oracle in this case, launched its cloud solution SaaS. So also from their own license point of view, there is a possibility. But we're diverting back to this centralized IT organization where you might end up in a couple of dozens application, and not every IT organization has the support to make Primavera business critical. So what we are doing is we're trying to paint a picture where you can easily get your own licenses or new licenses into a cloud infrastructure by LoadSpring for an economically reasonable amount. So I'm going to make a very simple analogy with a pizza. So what do we need to make one pizza? This is the simplest pizza recipe I could find. I need flour, I need cheese, I need ham, I need tomato sauce. So all my ingredients will cost me approximately $5. But in this case, this pizza is not deployed because it's a raw pizza and nobody likes raw pizzas. So if I want this pizza ready to be served to me, I need to bake it. So I need an oven to bake this pizza. But now this single pizza will cost me 3,005 euros. It should be a very good pizza if this price should be reasonable for one pizza. So our point to be made is what we want to do is we want to scale this, because the second pizza will be 5 euros, but nobody is going to buy that first pizza for 3,005 euros. So LoadSpring and Primaned partnered up. So we bought the oven. LoadSpring is the oven specialist. They have a very nice oven in Europe, a data center, and we are the Primavera specialists. So we paid for the oven, and we're going to charge everybody a very small bit of this oven, so everybody gets an affordable pizza. That's what the idea is, what we have come up with together with LoadSpring, because the infrastructure is a very important thing. It needs to be scalable, because if we need more pizzas, if we need more Primavera licenses, we need more memory, we need more CPUs, we need more whatever, and that's their specialization. So together with LoadSpring and Primaned from a Primavera point of view, we have this single European data center specialized for P6, where we are creating and deploying Primavera to everybody, to release Primavera to everybody. So I just made some topics on this, some bullet points. It's a single virtual tenant. What's meaning of that is that everybody gets its own single point of truth. So nobody is sharing a database or whatever you want to call it to look at each other data. But so for everybody has their own virtual environment to have your own Primavera. It's located in Europe. That's very important for European customers. They also have different databases or data centers in the rest of the world. But in this case, Primavera is located in Rotterdam. That's in the south of the Netherlands. We really are looking for our neighbors, and our customers are in our neighborhood in Europe, so to speak. So we really will be starting with the location Europe. We're going always for the latest stable release. And the latest stable release is something we have checked. So our consultants and our schedulers need to work on a day-to-day basis with this Primavera. And as soon as it comes out, we will test it, we will stress test it, etc. And then there's a go from our consulting organization to say, well, this is a stable release, and we are going to deploy this into this data center. It's very quickly, because this is our core business. Everything within Primaned has to be done with project control, and Primavera is a big part of that. So we have an operational window from 3 to 5 days, meaning if you order today, within 3 to 5 days, working days, you can get online, you can start creating your schedule. I have been seeing organization within, from the inside out, where a operational window or a service level agreement of 6 weeks is in place, meaning I am ordering a Primavera license right now with my IT organization, and it's taking them up to 4 to 6 weeks to get it on my computer, because it's not their core business. They need to check the procedures, etc. And within Primaned, it's core business. Because the oven is paid for, because the oven is in place, because the data center is in place, we can start getting people online for one user. We can start getting people online for one project. And actually, we are having customers with one single user in the data center, backup everything for one project. With this cloud solution, it will become more platform independent. I'm running a Mac OS. Primavera doesn't like Mac OS, but with this virtualization, I can run the professional client on my Mac. I can do the web, I can do everything later on. And we have a solid foundation to grow from this. So we can go into the different modules like team member, like risk analysis, but also, and I know Asif is going to talk a bit on this later on, it has your core business in place from a project controls point of view to integrate with other solutions. BI for visualization of your schedule, or for example, with a GIS, with a geographical information system. For example, with risk management solutions like Safran, with asset management solutions like PM Web, with cost management solutions like Unifier, SAP, whatever. So it has a very strong basis to grow your project control solution set into a bigger organization, into a bigger deployment within your own team, in your own project or projects or organization. So that's a very short and brief discussion, or brief set out what we, from a partner perspective, Primaned, for the Primavera point of view, LoadSpring with a broader managed hosting point of view, are going to bring to the market, because we believe, and well, we already have proven it to a couple of customers in the Netherlands, in Europe, that there is a place for this solution to that. I will be here the whole seminar, the whole webinar. So if you have any questions, shout out to Carrie, and we'll deal with them at the end of the discussion. I really would like to hand over the presentation stick to my partner, Asif.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining, and it's a pleasure to speak to you from wherever you are around the world. I'm in cold UK today, so hence the jumper. So I'm sure you're in much nicer climates than I am. Just want to make sure the panel can see my screen. Carrie, can you see my screen okay? Paul?
Yes, we can see your screen, Asif.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an introduction into cloud, digital transformation and the new normal. Before I start, I really haven't talked much in the presentation about who LoadSpring are. LoadSpring are a managed hosting company. We've been around for about 20 years. The parent company is in the USA. We have operations in the UK, and we're delivering services to customers all around the world. The main focus of what LoadSpring does is to support project control applications in the cloud. As you probably all know, 20, 30 years ago, there was probably 10 or 20 core tools that we used. Now there could be 300, 400, 500 different tools that we're being asked to use or want to use on the deployment of project control services on our construction projects globally. And that's made that challenge much, much harder. So for the last 20 years, LoadSpring has been supporting global customers in hosting and managing applications and delivering a performance set of tools to their users globally. So that's really what we do. So I'm just going to rattle through the presentation. First slide is actually a poll question. So what we're going to do is just ask you all, you'll have a poll appear on your screen in a second, and the poll will be, what is your biggest pandemic relating challenge? Is it cloud adoption? Is it remote working? Or is it security? It'd be interesting to get your view as a team just online now in terms of that. So Carrie, would you mind administering that poll?
Certainly, launching the poll now, Asif.
So we'll give you 30 seconds, if you don't mind, just to quickly select A, B, or C, or want it, cloud adoption, remote working, or security. It'd be quite interesting to see your view as a smaller subgroup compared to some of the information that we're actually researching at LoadSpring and what we're finding about the market. This year, as you all know, has been a really challenging year for a number of reasons, but I think just the way we have had to operate and how we're working has been quite a seismic change for us, and probably something that's going to be quite long lasting.
So I'm just going to end the poll now, Asif.
Thanks.
And I'm ending the poll. Not everybody has voted. We've had about 60% of the votes, and in terms of the results, Asif, I'm going to share those now. So.
Okay, so remote working has got the highest percentage, which 41%. Second comes cloud adoption, and third becomes security. So interesting. I think that is going to be very reflective of the information that we're finding. Thanks, Carrie. If you just don't mind closing that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we looked at was how is the pandemic and how is what we've all faced globally in the last 12 months or in the last 10 months really affected us from a business perspective. I think the first thing is that lots of independent research has identified that within construction, or the AEC, architectural engineering construction environment, the use of cloud has spiked by up to 63% this year, which I think is quite significant. Secondly, 40% of companies have reported as accelerating their move to the cloud this year. And in particular, they've looked at the types of cloud offering, and they've identified platform as a service as one of the fastest growing cloud service provisions that they're looking to invest in. Thirdly, 26% of customers that have been surveyed have said that actually data lakes is going to be a really important focus for their businesses over the next 12 months. And that's the provision of having some sort of centralized way to harness, manage, store, but more importantly, analyze, interpret, and then draw analysis from of their data. So data lakes is something that we see as very important to many organizations. I think naturally, because we've been working at home, because everyone has been working remotely, we've had a huge spike in external attacks. So the surveys that we looked at reported a 630% increase in attacks due to the number of people working remotely, and also the fact that most people are using their own devices to access corporate information and project information. And finally, 58% of the surveys that we looked at, 58% of those surveys believe that over 50% of their teams will remote work in the next 12 months. So actually this change of people working from home over the last sort of 10, 12 months is probably going to be quite significant for us and going to lead to permanent changes in our working habits. So that leads me just to give you a very, very high level of how do you select the right way to enter the cloud market, because there are lots of options and it's pretty daunting task. I think the very first thing to do is to identify the correct cloud platform based on your application requirements. This was really easy 30 years ago because most organizations had quite a healthy, well-funded, well-resourced IT department, and actually they were the internal team that was responsible for managing our servers, data centers, our operating system, and our applications and security. So pretty much everything was put onto our internal environments for us to manage. And indeed now there still is a position for internal IT. Typically what's happening is internal IT is working with external data center providers, and they're providing the infrastructure through a third party, but they're still responsible for the application management. But the type of applications they're running has, I think, changed. Over the last 20 years, we've seen a real spike in software vendors introducing software as a service, SaaS products. And software as a service for certain application is a really great proposition. So if you're looking at collaboration tools or CDEs where you need different organizations to share and collate information that relates to all the different parties, then that's a really good offering. But actually, depending on the type of tool you're looking at, SaaS could be really appropriate or not so appropriate. So Microsoft 365, for instance, typically most organizations have moved to the Microsoft Cloud, which is a really, really useful way of consuming that product. You get the latest versions, you get the latest updates, you don't have to worry about the back-end operating system. It's all just delivered to your desktop. I think when it comes to project control services though, or project control applications, there's a slightly different level of control, level of access, level of integration that we need with these applications. So going straight to SaaS could be a challenge for you. So there's two hybrid versions. There's infrastructure as a service, where really you're just buying a third party's infrastructure. So you might be going to Google Cloud or AWS or Azure. Your teams are still responsible for operating systems, databases, security, and running the application and supporting that application, or platform as a service. And this is where the surveys are indicating there is the highest use. And this is really where LoadSpring sits. So we provide all of the data centers, the infrastructure, the servers, the operating systems, the databases, and security around your infrastructure. You select the applications, and we are agnostic about the applications. You just select what applications you want. And then what we do is we build an environment to support those applications for you and your users. And we're working with partners like Primaned and Paul's team to make sure that you get the best consultancy and training services through Paul's team, and you get the best infrastructure services and support services and performance services through the LoadSpring team. So understanding the applications and what you need to be able to do in those applications is really important when you're considering which vertical you want to host in. And actually, typically most organizations will have a hybrid. They won't just have one vertical for all applications. They'll have some internal IT, some infrastructure as a service, some SaaS, and some platform as a service. When you're selecting the tools, and particularly when we're talking about project control tools, and when you're selecting the type of environment to put project controls tools in, you probably need to think about the items and the areas that you want to be able to control and manage from an organization's perspective. And actually what we've identified is that there's a few that are particularly important. If you're running multiple versions of an application, if you want to make sure that the application data stays in a certain country, if you want to make sure that you've got integration services between application A, B, and C, if you want to also make sure that you've got some sort of DR service, so that if your primary data center goes down, you've still got the provision to run your applications really quickly. These sort of tools become really important. or these sort of items become really important. And when you start analyzing against the verticals, typically on-prem, 30, 40 years ago, we had loads of resources, we had a very big team, and they were probably able to do more of that service. Actually, what's happened over the last 30 years is that those IT teams have shrunk to managing core business applications. And actually, either we go to a SaaS route or we go to a PaaS route. And as you can see here, PaaS tends to give you more of the business value and addressing your business challenges than most of the other options that are available. Right, I'm going to ask you all now again to do a second poll. If we can increase the participation from 60% to 90%, that would be great. So the second question is, please can you share your organization's cloud maturity level? Do you think you're entry level, where you're just getting started? Are you cloud aware, where you're in the cloud and your focus is on performance, security, flexibility, integration? Or would you class your organization as enterprise level, where pretty much everything is in the cloud, either through a SaaS platform, through a platform as a service platform, or through an infrastructure as a service platform, and you're really you're using that as a centralized command and control and reporting center? So Carrie, if you don't mind administering the poll.
Sure, relaunching now, Asif.
Thanks.
There you go.
So again, if you can, you've got about 30 seconds. So if you can just tick one of these boxes and as many responses as possible. Let's try and see if we can get over 60 this time. Are you entry level, cloud aware, or are you enterprise?
53%, 57% of participants voted now.
Come on, last few.
60%.
Whoa, let's beat it.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll now.
Okay.
And share the results. There you are.
Okay, interesting. So most organizations, 53% of those polled have said that they're cloud aware. Secondly, enterprise, 24% have said they're enterprise. And finally, only 24%, 24% said that they're entry level. So that's interesting. Thanks, Carrie, if you can close that poll.
Sure.
And actually, that's really important, because we think this is a journey. Going to the cloud is a journey. It's not just waking up one morning and going, right, I'm going to put all my applications into a SaaS environment. I'm now cloud enabled. Over the last 5-10 years, we've been talking about cloud. Cloud's become more prevalent, more of our applications, more of our personal applications, banking applications, social media applications are all cloud-based. So cloud has had a big impact on us both personally and professionally. When we're talking to organizations about that cloud journey, typically we start with organizations who are thinking, right, we need to do something related to providing our applications into the cloud to make them easier accessible. They're typically interested in cost as well, so cost needs to be an important consideration, but they want the application to be delivered on an infrastructure that's suitable and to a range of people. And we think that that's an entry level sort of strategy, and most companies start at that point, and they usually have one application. Over time, having used that one application in the cloud, they become cloud aware, where the organization is now defining and implementing its cloud strategy. Security becomes really important, because as you put in more applications into the cloud and you've got more users into the cloud, you need to make sure that that environment is really secure. Performance becomes also very much more important, because actually you've not got one application, you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different applications who all perform in different ways. They're used by different teams, they have different functions, and they need a different infrastructure to actually make them work. And finally, because the organizations who are cloud aware have got a number of applications, they're thinking about integration opportunities. So how can I link my P6 data with my PM wave data? Or how can I link my P6 data with some cost data or some risk data? And finally, we've got the enterprise level. Now, typically, I think the aspiration is for everyone to be an enterprise level cloud user, but actually most organizations are in that middle bracket of being cloud aware, which is very similar to the survey results. Enterprise level is where your cloud strategy is absolutely part of your transformation process. It's ingrained in exactly everything that your organization is doing, internally and externally. Security is key, performance is key, but now all of your core applications are in the cloud. You're looking for enterprise adoption and enterprise support for all your user base. And by doing so, by having all your applications in there, all your people and teams using those applications in a single environment, you have a centralized command and control center and the ability to report on exactly what's going on your projects at any one time. Moving on then, so how do we work as a partner? We absolutely want to work very closely with your IT teams, and that's typically how we engage with organizations, either that's directly with companies or through partners like Paul and Primaned. And LoadSpring work to manage those core applications that you're using for project controls rather than the applications that you're managing and running as a business. So, you know, we want to be viewed as a partner as Primaned are. So Primaned are your sort of your consultancy partners, we're your infrastructure partners to make the tools that you're using, no matter what those tools, work at the best possible level they can and for all your teams. Your final poll question, you'll be glad to hear. So let's try and get more than 60% this time. Do you believe that having all your project control applications in a centralized cloud platform makes your team more productive? Yes, no, or still unsure?
Launching that now.
So again, 30 seconds. Do you believe that having all your tools in a central environment helps you become more productive? Yes, no, or still not sure? If you can please tick one of those boxes, that'd be appreciated.
Up to 62% now, Asif, so a few
Great.
more seconds. Okay, ending the poll now and sharing the results.
Brilliant. 82% have said yes, it is going to make them more productive. And I think that is absolutely reflective of what the rest of the global industries are thinking. And actually, this is not a case of if, it's a case of how and when. We absolutely need to start thinking about it. And you know, your choice is based on your own particular organization and how you feel about delivering your applications. We just want to talk to you about the fact that we understand this market and we understand project controls and how to manage those project controls that are used in construction. That's great. Thanks, Carrie. If you can close out. Okay, only 2 more slides from me. Data lakes. It's really important that the information that we start to generate on our projects is consumed for future projects, because our industry has typically not really learned its lessons from historical projects. And we've got a particularly difficult environment. We've got lots of different organizations involved in a single construction project. We've got more applications that we're using now for project controls than we've ever had before. And we've got huge amounts of data, both 2-dimensional data, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5, 6, 7-dimensional data being produced by these tools as well. We can also consume those tools locally. We can have them on premise, we can have them on a network, we can have them as a SaaS offering. And they're all being written in different operating systems and in different languages in terms of the software language. And actually what's happening is that over time, if we're trying to sort of collect all that data, we're trying to just pull lots of data from lots of different applications into an environment. And many organizations are doing that, and they're trying to do it in a data lake, but actually what they're creating is a data swamp. LoadSpring's approach to this has been slightly different. For 20 years, we've been managing a variety of different tools. And our view is actually what we should be doing is thinking about the integration between the key tools that you're looking at, whether it's P6 and Prism, or it's Ecosys and Rivet, or it's Deltek and Esri, whatever the combination of tools that your organization is looking at using, we should try and start providing you the ability to get some insight into linking those two tools together. And we do that by creating data ponds. So within our platform, we can start to link data together from different applications. So that whole integration issue that Paul was talking about earlier on. What that is enabling you to do, though, is it's enabling you to start creating data ponds which are structured and which have data which is actually codified and purified and cleansed, so that when you absorb that information into your data lake, actually, rather than creating a data swamp, you're creating this much more cleaner view of the information that you're running or collecting on the projects that you're delivering. And we think that's a really important area for 2021 for most of our customers. So our final slide, what do we think the success factors are of supporting applications into the cloud? I think the first thing, obviously, is for you as an organization to select the right tools. And secondly, for you as an organization to have partners like Primaned who can train your teams, help you configure applications and support those tools. That's really important. But from LoadSpring's point of view, we have a 7-step success factor. The first one is security. The environment that we're providing has to be absolutely secure, and you need to be assured that that security is in place, and we provide that. We need to be able to support the infrastructure. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is working, the applications are working, the performance level of the applications is working, so that from a consumption point of view, your users log on to the platform and they're able to use the application really, really seamlessly, and it's working very well. Time to value, Paul talked about time to value earlier on when he was saying that, typically it can take 6 weeks. We've heard 6 months to actually select, buy and implement an application. From our point of view, it can take as little as 5 days if you're a net new customer, or if you're a customer that's already using our platform and you just want to add more users or more, you want to create a new project environment within our cloud platform, it can take 6 minutes. We can do it very, very quickly. So being able to react and be very flexible, very quick is really important, we feel. Alignment, I think with alignment, our view is that you've got a range of tools that you're using as an organization. So you might use P6 from a scheduling perspective, but you might be using at-risk from a risk perspective. You might be using CostX from a costing perspective, compared to another user who's using a completely different mix of tools. Whatever mix of tools that you are using is absolutely fine. The key thing is to have those mix of tools in a centralized environment. So actually they're in one place. You're managing the data, you've got the access to the data, and you can look at integration between those tools. By having all those tools in one place, you can start reporting using tools like Power BI or whatever tools that you're using to look at actually, what am I seeing from my information? What sort of insights can I get from my cost data, from my scheduling data, from my risk data on how we're delivering our projects? The platform's got to have really good uptime. So you've got to make sure that the uptime that you're getting from the application is very, very high. So we have an SLA and we can work with you to make sure that that SLA is in line with your business requirements and your projects that you're delivering. And finally, application performance. It's really important to understand that every single application and even versions of applications work very differently. So if you look at P6, version 8 of P6 compared to version 19.12 of P6 work very, very differently, and the performance levels that they need are different. That's something that LoadSpring work with you and the vendors on to make sure that we have the right performance level. So when users are using the tools are operating and performing at the best possible level. And that's the end from me. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to have a quick Q&A session. So I'm going to hand over back to Carrie.
Thanks, Asif. Right, over to questions. Thank you both to Paul and Asif there for that information. In terms of questions, we've got a few questions come through. First one's come through from Raoul, was just a general question, which I think will be probably on a lot of people's minds. Yes, we will be sharing the content shortly, and we'll also be sharing contact details shortly as well. So all content will be sent out to participants. Second question that's come through is regarding an older version of P6. We're being asked if you've got a project which is running an old version of P6, perhaps one that's not even supported by Oracle directly themselves anymore, can we and how would we deal with that? So Asif, maybe you want to start and Paul can come in on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have probably just under 500,000 P6 users globally within our platform, and we're running you know, from 1912, which is probably the latest stable version, all the way through to, I think we've got one customer on version 3 of P6. Now, the majority of our customers are on 15.2.12. We have some on 8. We have some, and then we've got various amounts in between. Our view is that you should be on a stable version of P6. Once a version of an application is no longer supported by the vendor, we can't do any more than provide the latest patches that have been applied on that version. But typically we are still supporting out-of-date applications for our user base. We would stress try and keep on the a stable version. So we are under a process of looking at some of the really early versions and making sure that people move up to a later version. But we run multiple versions of applications. Paul?
Yes, and I think to add to that, what we are doing is there's also a transformation opportunity. So if you have version 5, we did an earlier migration from 5 to the latest version 19, you have to take a look at your data. So you can cleanse your data while migrating, have a clean slate, so to speak. So we at Primaned, we are a support partner. We do know every single version since the spring of Primavera. So we can do the data transformation because there's sometimes different data models to different versions. What we can do internally is move them along the ladder of versioning, supporting, etc. We do, as a support partner, have all patches and insights in what bugs are fixed in what version. So I think with the infrastructure in place to host any version possible, with the support and insight knowledge from a data perspective and a functional perspective at Primaned, we are 99.99% sure that every version of Primavera can be brought into Primaned and can be cloud ready, delivered by LoadSpring. So yes, I don't know who the question was from, but yes, we can deal with whatever you bring us, and we'll serve you the right pizza.
Great, thanks for that, Paul. So we've got another question in, which is, if we start our journey with one user only, do we have full control on versions, or do you drive that in your own environment?
Yes, you can have full versioning control, of course. What we do with newborn customers, we try to have them on the latest version. When you probably, it's an assumption, and I know what assumption means. If you're a single user, probably you will work as a freelancer or a one-man army in your territory. So the import-export possibilities are very good at the latest version. So we will try to get you on the latest version. There are always possibilities to exceptions, but I think a good advice from technical as well as flexible point of view is get you into a reasonable late stable release.
But I do think that if you've got a unique version requirement, then we can also deal with that as well, of course.
Yep.
Next question that's come through is around databases. How do you deal with additional databases? If I'm presuming there's numerous databases this particular person has, how do we deal with numerous databases? Do we charge extra for that, or how does that work?
I'll take initially that question, if you don't mind, Carrie. So part of our service is that we provide the databases for a particular version of application. So if you're looking at version 17.12 or 19.12, whatever version it is, once we're hosting that version in our platform, if you say, look, can we have an additional database, we just provide that as part of the service. I mean, I think it's sensible to state, though, that you shouldn't have 500 databases on a particular version. We need to be sensible about the number of databases you have per version, but it's part of our service to give you that.
Great,
thanks. Yeah, I think to add to that, there is an advice. Indeed, 500 is a bit much for a couple of users. So there is an advisory aspect to it. What's a good ratio? Sometimes different project needs to be in different databases. Different users need one or more databases. There's a whole assessment you want to make before just say, well, give me, if it's included, give me 20 databases and I have 20 users. Also from a data point of view, you want to have connection, so you can count or report or have insights in different databases. Technologically seen, yes, a lot is possible, everything is possible, but there's also some common practice to this.
Great, thanks for that, Paul. A couple of related questions next. We've had one question, which is, how do you deal with integrations to cost management tools? And actually another question, which is project controls using Ecosys for cost and EVM, and extracting curves, both cost and EVM curves out of it for MIS? So two slightly related questions there. So I don't know, Asif, if you want to talk about perhaps cost management and EVM tools and how we go about integrating those on the platform to get that kind of BI, MIS type of information.
Yeah, so from our point of view, we're agnostic about the tool. So no matter what the tool is that you're using, we'll look at hosting that tool for you. Primary aim is to get the tool into the platform. Once it's in the platform, we can look at the architecture of those tools, look at the underlying database tables, because again, we're managing those, and think about what is available within the actual tool set that allows you to pull data from application A and application B and integrate those bits of information. The biggest challenge typically is that those two applications don't sit in the same environment and don't operate within the same database and don't have the same operating systems. Those challenges typically are overcome as soon as you move them to LoadSpring. So once they're in LoadSpring, we can use either web services, we can use API, or we can use a VPN connection to allow you to pull data together. Now, sometimes that's really straightforward, like in a web services, or other times we'll work with consultants like Paul and other global consultants that will help us with that integration service. Essentially, LoadSpring don't do the actual integrating and the integration service. We're providing the gateway to allow you to connect application A to application B. Paul?
I think the answer will remain exactly the same. Yes, there's also a functional point of view. So from a technical point of view, probably everything is to be connected. So I've done an integration where an invoice number will become a work order number, and that's a very logical step. But technologically, IT systems don't know what numbers mean. So an IT system doesn't know if an invoice number is an invoice number or work order number or just a number of the site you're working on. So the challenges within processes, people, and technology is not the technology anymore. And with a LoadSpring partner in this, and with the technology standards which are in place nowadays with web services, APIs, all these kinds of integration solutions, almost everything is interconnectable to each other in an environment like LoadSpring where the highways are paved already. That's fairly simple. The functional part is the hardest part. Who's the owner of the data? Who triggers an invoice? Who triggers EVM? Who triggers a schedule? Sometimes it's obvious, P6 is the boss of the scheduling data, but who gives the actual cost? Is it SAP? Is it Ecosys? Is it whatever? So that's where we need to partner up in this case. LoadSpring, Primaned, some other partners perhaps for different solutions, where you can interconnect this data to give you an integral overview, a project insight into what EVM is or what your cost data looks like or where your dashboard is going to look like.
Just very briefly on the second point of your question, with regards to Ecosys, yes, we've got a lot of experience in running Ecosys globally for many big organizations. So that integration path is already defined. We're already delivering it. So there are various applications that we already have integrated for customers and are integrating for customers. So depending on what the tools are, we probably just need to understand what the tools are and what we've already, and provide you some information on what we've done.
Yeah. Great, thanks for that, Asif. I was just going to come in on that our experience of cost management tools is quite wide and varied. Obviously, Ecosys is one, Prism, Deltek, Cobra, etc. We're integrating for all of these, and then actually also you can view the visualizations, S curves, etc. From those tools directly, or if you wanted to go into something like Power BI, for example, that's also an option on our platform via a Power BI gateway. Yeah. Next question I've got is, are all environments covered with standard backup and DR policy for geo-replication, Or is that something that we need to pay for if we go from entry level environment to larger set of users?
So great question. Part of our standard service is to provide you with a standard warm DR service, which I think is unique. I don't think anyone else is providing that. And we talk about RPO and RTO, recovery point objective and recovery time objective. So how quickly will it take to set up the environment in a separate data center and get your applications available? And how quickly can we get the last backup of your data reinstated and delivered to your users? Now, we provide a typical service for every customer. What we can then do is bespoke that service, which is an additional fee. Now, we can get from 5 days, 24 hours down to 1 hour and 1 hour, in some cases 15 minutes, 15 minutes. In particular, we do a lot of work on oil and gas and refinery projects where downtime is essential to minimize. So if there is any downtime, there's huge penalties associated with it for refineries. So typically there we provide 15 minute for RTO, RPO. So we can absolutely meet any provisions that a customer has.
Great, thanks for that, Asif. Next question is LoadSpring cost based on number of users? So if we have, say, P6 EPPM, are there any synergies or cost savings for user licenses?
Yeah, I mean, one of the important things is that, traditionally we don't provide the license. You buy the license and you've got your licenses. We're hosting those licenses and making them available to your user communities. I think we can host any number of users, but the more users you have per application, the more economic it becomes per application, per user costing. Because actually, if you've got one user on one application and one version of that application, that's one cost. If you've got 100 users on that application and that version, that's that same cost divided by 100. So actually, from our point of view, the bigger the number of users, essentially the cheaper it is per user.
Yeah, and I think the question also goes, Asif, towards bring your own licensing model. If the customer's got an existing investment in licenses, obviously they can bring those onto the platform. Absolutely. And leverage that existing license model.
Yeah. And it's really important. Sorry, Paul. It's really important to not get pushed by your vendors at the moment. A lot of vendors are saying, look, give us your old licenses that you've bought, your perpetual license, and we'll convert that to a SaaS license. Well, you've already paid for that license. That perpetual license you already own, and we can SaaS enable that license for you, if you like, by putting it on the LoadSpring platform.
Well, and a bit to add to that. So what we are doing with this solution we are having in place is that you can bring your own license. We can support it, and we are the only support partner in Europe. You can buy licenses at Primaned, and you can buy hosting at Primaned. So Asif is completely right. One pizza with one oven is very expensive. One oven with 100 pizzas is a little less expensive per pizza. But what we did as LoadSpring and Primaned is for the smaller amount, because not everybody wants a big operational center for just one license. So we have like a centralized ID of bring your license to our single virtual tenants, where we are going to bear a bit of that cost, where for a smaller amount that you can grow into that, you can grow out to that to a really dedicated bespoke solution. But also if you bring everything to one partner, yes, I think there will be cost savings, one single point of contact, no back and forward discussing it from a vendor to a partner to a own hosting platform. With the one LoadSpring Primaned partnership, we can take care of all these questions you are raising, Will.
I think we've got one final question to see if just conscious of time as well. So maybe I'll put this to you. It's what are the strengths and drawbacks of going directly to a SaaS model?
I think that, it obviously depends on the application that you're thinking about. So if you're thinking about an application like Microsoft 365, there's loads of advantages for you because you've got a global organization that's going to give you access to their range of tools via a SaaS platform, and you're consuming that tool. When you're looking at project control tools, there's a different set of criteria that you need to evaluate. You need to just understand, how much control have I got on the version? What version do I want to use? Am I enabled? Do I have a say in upgrading that version, or can I keep on that version? where is my data? Is that data my data, or is it the vendor's data? How can I integrate that data with other applications? And more importantly, when I'm finished my project or projects, how can I start analyzing that data? So I think it depends on the application, but I think there's some really key issues that need to be thought about.
Great, thank you, Steve. Well, that brings us to the end of the questions. So thank you very much for the questions, everybody. Thank you for your active participation. We'll be following up with all the attendees afterwards as well, either by phone or email. And if you do have any further questions or queries, please send them to myself or my colleagues. Our contact details are on the screen now. I'd just like to thank everybody again for attending, and thank you to our speakers for the presentations and for sharing your knowledge and experience. I think it's been invaluable. A copy of the recording webinar will be sent out to everyone by email. So please do monitor your emails because maybe that, because of the size of the recording, it could go into junk. So just be careful to keep a close monitor on that over the next 24 hours. Thank you, everybody, once again for attending, and I hope you have a good day or the rest of the night, depending upon your location.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.